Witches from all over have flocked to Salem this week, donning their iconic hats, cloaks, and brooms, all in honor of Halloween. Now, it's all in good fun, but some historians and researchers are turning their attention to the dark past behind this costume. In May, Connecticut began officially exonerating dozens of people who were tried and convicted of witchcraft. And now there's a similar push happening right here in this state. I'm joined by organizer of the Massachusetts Witch Hunt Justice Project and writer and researcher Josh Hutchinson. Now, he is also the treasurer of the Witch Trial History Project. Plus, Emerson Baker is here, a historian and professor at Salem State University and the author of A Storm of Witchcraft, The Salem Witch Trials and the American Experience. Thank you both for being with me tonight.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and one of the things that you both kind of mentioned was Halloween has nothing to do with witches. And so I'm very interested to hear about that.
Well, there is a connection between modern-day neo-pagans and Wiccans, many of whom call themselves witches, because Halloween is Samhain, which is a high holy day for those folks, so it's a religious holiday for them. However, that is not to be confused with the people who were called witches in the 17th century. In fact, were over 150 people who were tried or accused of witchcraft in Salem in trials that lasted over a year and a half. And ironically, there actually were no witch trials in October itself.
That's so interesting. And this whole exoneration project really, I think, captured our attention as we were researching this topic. And so I would love to talk about what that looks like in our state, Josh.
Great. In Massachusetts, many of the individuals convicted during the Salem witchcraft trials have been exonerated. However, 5 individuals executed in Boston prior to Salem have not had their names cleared by legislation. So what we're looking for is to have an amendment to the same legislation from 1957 that's been used to exonerate those convicted at Salem.
So why is that so important to you?
Well, we still see a lot of witch hunting going on today, both metaphorical witch hunts where we're scapegoating others and persecuting them out of our fears, and literal witch hunts. According to a United Nations report, between 2009 and 2019, there were at least 20,000 reports of violent attacks on persons accused of witchcraft in over 60 nations. So it's still something that's very alive and with us today.
That's so interesting. Emerson, Professor Baker, I'm also thoughtful of, Salem ends up being this hub of witchcrafts and quote unquote witches and things like this. And I know you're right there at Salem State University. It must be an interesting time of year for you.
Yeah, it absolutely is. The city is expecting probably around 1 million visitors this month, and it's certainly a major part today of the economy of Salem is the tourist industry, which is largely based on the witch hunts. But I do like to point out that when it comes to witch hunts, Salem's the tip of the iceberg. We know that in Europe and her colonies in the early modern period, about 100,000 people were tried for witchcraft, and unfortunately, about half of those, about 50,000 people, were executed. In some cases, as many as 2,000 in one persecution. So, by those standards, even though the tragedy of Salem is terrible, and in fact, my 9th great uncle was one of the victims. It's interesting that Salem is the witch city as opposed to some of these other places. Why Salem has become notorious and over this.
I'm also thoughtful of how the concept of these so-called witch trials are kind of part of New England history and the lore of New England and things like that. I'm thinking of movies like Practical Magic, or, as we move on farther down in history. And I'm thoughtful of if sort of the fanciful piece of it gets in the way of the history and people learning what actually happened here.
I fear it does. I mean, everybody enjoys a good movie or having some fun. But if you realize the fact that at least 25 innocent people lost their lives in the witch trials in 1692 and hundreds more had their lives forever ruined, I sometimes grow a little tired over what I call the vampire fangs and fried dough syndrome that we see every October in Salem.
Interesting. Josh, talk to me about what is the process like in trying to exonerate some of these folks that were tried and convicted of witchcraft? What's that process look like?
Right now, we're asking people to sign our petition. We're gathering signatures. That's at change.org/witchtrials. We're also beginning to reach out to politicians in the Massachusetts General Court because we'll need the legislature to amend the 1957 resolution, which is the same process they did with the Elizabeth Johnson Jr. exoneration last year.
And so is it a lot of like pulling historical records, genealogy, that kind of thing? Like how do you go about identifying these folks and then going further to get them exonerated?
Right. We're working with historians to verify that we have the correct list of individuals convicted in Boston. And we've used so far historical sources that are available, primary source documents where we can, and secondary sources. So we look at things like works by David D. Hall, John Demos, those works, and they point back to works by John Hale, Increase and Cotton Mather, and to some original court documents.
Professor Baker, I imagine as we hear about, the news headline on the surface of witches being exonerated, it does also give an opportunity and a platform to talk about the history.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's very much of a teachable moment for us all because, as I like to say, really kind of every generation in American history has its Salem moment. I mean, the one we're all most familiar with really is the Crucible and the Red Scare, right? But it's sort of a universal of American history because witch hunts of any time are about scapegoating people because they're different than you in some way and then blaming them for your problems. So unfortunately, it's kind of a part of the human condition, I fear.
Is there a part in terms of your work and research, Professor Baker, is there a story that sticks out to your mind? You mentioned you do have an ancestor that you know of as well.
Well, yeah, but I almost hate to say that because I didn't write the book or research this because of that. I found that out in the middle of my research, that in fact, Roger Toothaker was like my ninth grade uncle, and he died in prison in the horrible dungeon while awaiting trial. But I think the bigger point is I really think that this is our American story, that there are so many people who are descended. And, if you aren't, the person sitting next to you or some member of your family probably is. And I think that's one reason why Salem has become the witch city, because it has become, New England's an American story.
I can only imagine with, the tourism dollars that are coming into Salem. Do you all see that type of funding for your work? You're laughing, Professor Baker.
Wouldn't that be wonderful if state universities receive that kind of funding? We can dream of that day, right, Josh?
Right. That would be the dream.
Josh, what tends to be the reaction when you go into spaces and you talk about this work that you're doing in terms of this exoneration project?
Most people aren't aware that there were witch trials outside of Salem in New England. People are beginning to be aware of Connecticut because that's been in the news. But people are only just realizing now that there were witch trials in Boston also.
And we know, and one caveat that from my friends that live in Danvers talk about a lot is that a lot of the witch trials happened in Danvers versus Salem. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. There were, it's really Salem. It was part of Salem then, Salem Village, and it was the center of the outbreak. But in fact, there were more people accused in Andover than in either Salem Village or Salem. So it really is kind of America's trial. And I just want to mention, I think, the work that Josh and everyone else is doing is really wonderful. People ask me sometimes, how does this matter? These people have been dead for 300 years. But there are literally hundreds of thousands of descendants of these folks. And they reach out and get in touch with us and say how important this work is and how meaningful it is to them. They really consider it unfinished business.
I imagine it's also an untold part of the American story.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like I'm sure, Josh mentioned, that I don't think many people understand the fact that Salem was just one example that took place really throughout New England in the 17th century and really a worldwide phenomenon.
Josh, I imagine you also connect this a lot to the human rights conversation that we talk about on a global scale as well, that you mentioned earlier in our conversation.
Yes, absolutely. There's very clear human rights violations occurring in many nations in the world. There are even these sorts of murders occurring here in the U.S. from time to time. We've had 2 murders last year in New York State, and there's a gentleman on trial in El Paso, Texas right now for a 2020 murder of someone he accused of witchcraft. But it's globally, there's so many dozens of nations where this is happening, and we're talking thousands of lives being changed by this.
So interesting. We started out trying to set up a spooky conversation and got a real lesson in history and also current human rights conversations. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.